Thank you, President Mazie. Today, in addition to awarding degrees to our graduates, we have the honor and privilege of granting an honorary degree. Colleges and universities have been awarding honorary degrees for generations. These degrees are the symbols of recognition and acknowledgement of significant accomplishments. It is the highest honor that an institution may bestow. Today, we continue this highly honored academic tradition. Following the approval of the unanimous vote from our University Board of Trustees, we honor Howard Aldrich with an honorary doctorate of sociology. And may I ask Dr. Aldrich to please join me at the podium. Howard Aldrich earned his bachelor's degree in sociology in 1965 from Bowling Green State University, and then earned a master's degree and a doctoral degree from the University of Michigan. Dr. Aldrich is the Keenan Professor of Sociology and an adjunct professor of business at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. He is also a faculty research associate at Duke University and a fellow at Cambridge University. His main research interests are entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial team formation, gender in entrepreneurship, and evolutionary theory. Among his more than 200 publications are 7 books, one of which have won 2 national awards. He has numerous awards for his teaching and mentoring. Dr. Aldrich won the Global Entrepreneurship Researcher of the Year Award from the Swedish Foundation of Small Business Research and has received the Distinguished Career Achievement Award from the Academy of Management. Howard Aldrich is a remarkable example of a BGSU graduate who has truly changed the world. In recognition of his distinguished career and accomplishments, Bowling Green State University is proud to bestow an honorary Doctor of Social Science degree to Howard Aldrich. And now President Mazie and I will hood Dr. Aldrich. I am pleased to present Dr. Aldrich to deliver our commencement address. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Before we begin, I notice some of you in the student section still don't have your smartphones out. Would you do me a favor and take out your smartphones? Because I'd like to try something. I'd like you to live tweet any remarks you hear today that you think are worthy of lasting recollection. So my Twitter handle is @HowardAldrich, all one word, @HowardAldrich, and you can use the hashtag BGSU. So please, if you haven't got your smartphone turned on, turn it on now. Thank you, President Mazie, for this wonderful opportunity to be back to a place I owe so much. To the graduates and their families, I say congratulations. This is an amazing day. You'll remember the rest of your life. I want to thank also Bowling Green for the honorary degree I've received. It's deepened my pride in being a member of the class of 1965. And finally, I want to thank my colleagues, in particular a shout out to the sociologists who are here and the Board of Trustees for all they've done for this university. After more than 50 years, my memories of this place are still crystal clear, brought back by preparing this talk, even though they're a bit tinged with nostalgia. Now, BGSU has been important to me and my family. There's sort of a legacy, in fact. Before me, I had cousins. After me, I had 3 brothers and a sister who attended. My mother, within a few years of my earning my degree, earned a master's degree from here. And probably most important of all, I met my wife, Penny, here. In fact, it was a little more than 50 years ago that I asked her to marry me in Prout Chapel. And it's been 50 years since, and we're still together. This is our golden wedding anniversary year. So I have a lot to be thankful for. Now, my theme today is start before you're ready, and talking about what I learned here at BGSU. What I discovered here in my 4 years is that you never know what you're truly capable of until you try stuff before you feel fully ready. Sometimes you can only learn how to do something by beginning to do it. Now, I'm a college professor, so I venerate the knowledge that comes through with books and lectures and things that go on in class, but I highly prize the knowledge that comes from learning by doing. In my field, we call this tacit knowledge. It's the knowledge that you don't get by people talking to you or writing things down for you. Those of you graduating today in the music arts, theater, will appreciate what I'm saying. And I had a great demonstration yesterday of this in our tour of the campus when it was pointed out to me that in aerospace, the first day of class, you're up in an airplane and you're asked to try to fly the plane. Is that true? Those of you who've done this? It's a great example of this. So while I was here, BGSU was essentially a tacit knowledge laboratory. I admit I made lots of mistakes. I'm going to tell you about some of them. Accidents happened, but the tacit knowledge I picked up in that process was invaluable. And so as I gained experience before I was ready, I eventually began to be able to use informed guesses, grounded intuition about the world, and I was able to solve some problems that previously would have stopped me cold. Let me tell you about just 4 of my experiences here. First, I entered BGSU before I was ready. I came from a school district that was so small that all 12 classes met in the same building. There were only 43 students in my graduating class. We not only knew everyone in our own class, we knew everybody in the high school. Everybody knew me, I knew everybody. We had no need for Facebook or Snapchat or Instagram. The instant I made a mistake, my grandma knew. I still remember my first days on campus here. I'd never been in a crowd of so many people. I remember walking across the quad in front of the student union and thinking to myself, this is enormous. It sort of felt like I was an extra in a Lord of the Rings battle scene. I felt intimidated. In classes, I sat in the front row because by sitting in the front row, I didn't have to acknowledge the fact that there were a lot of people behind me who would hear me when I spoke. Now, to my surprise, I discovered that the professors learned my name rather quickly. And they called me Mr. Aldrich, typically, not Howard, as happened in high school, but Mr. Aldrich. I kind of liked that formality. It was an assurance that they were taking what I had to say seriously. So over the next 4 years, I sought out those professors who had an open door policy, many of them in my major sociology, and I gained enormously from their generosity. Second, I enrolled in an advanced mathematics class before I was ready. Because of my high school grades and a placement exam I'd somehow gotten a high score on, I bypassed the 2 basic algebra courses and was placed in an introductory calculus course. Okay, I still remember my first day in that class. I realized I had no idea what was going on. Nothing in my high school class had prepared me for that experience. I tried to keep up. I even went to office hours, extra office hours to seek extra help, but it was hopeless. In less than 2 weeks, I realized I was in over my head. So I asked to be put back to the beginning, algebra sequence, where I discovered I could do the work. It was a humbling experience, but I learned a valuable lesson. When I begin too early and find myself in over my head, I simply admit it and seek help. Third, I volunteered for a job on the campus yearbook. Then it was a paper copy called The Key. for which I was not ready. I did this because in my senior year in high school, my favorite English teacher, Mrs. Boyer, had decided to publish the first high school yearbook in our school, and she recruited a bunch of students to help her. Now, I happened to be the kid who owned the camera, so I became the photo editor. The nominal editor, Bill, had no interest in the job, and so I learned a lot about other things as well in the production process. So when I got to Bowling Green and I saw that the yearbook, was looking for photographers, I figured, hey, I can do this job. I was a photo editor of my high school yearbook. Why not? Unfortunately, I had never used a 35 millimeter camera. Now, those of you who don't know what a 35 millimeter camera is, ask your parents or more likely your grandparents. I can just tell you, you have to set the exposure yourself, the exposure time. You have to manually focus. You have to pay attention to the light sources. Once again, I found myself in over my head. My colleagues, luckily at the Key, were helpful enough to show me some basics, and then I got off to my first assignment, which was to take pictures at a football game. I think it was the Miami game, actually. That's back in the days when we used to wipe the field with them. So in a little over 2 hours at that game, I took 6 rolls of very expensive 35 millimeter film, hundreds of pictures. I then had to develop the film using the darkroom, using very expensive, non-recyclable chemicals in the darkroom. Afterward, I showed my stuff very proudly, my developed negatives, to the photo editor, Bill. Bill was stunned. He told the advisor of the yearbook, Mr. Gordon, Jim Gordon, some of you might remember, the older faculty, he was apoplectic. He proceeded to explain to me, and I'm using explain in a neutral sense, but it wasn't just an explanation. He explained to me the basic economics of producing a college yearbook, and I was reassigned a task where they could keep an eye on me. So from that humbling experience, I learned another valuable lesson. If you start before you're ready, make sure there's somebody around with more experience than you in case they have to stop you. Finally, I joined the Acapella Choir before I was ready. Now, my grandmother was a music teacher. My mother played the piano. She used to sing to us as kids. I loved to sing, but I never learned to read music. My grandmother, bless her heart, tried for several years, and even she gave up. Now, my grandmother was a pioneer woman. She rode to her school teacher's job back in the early days, 20th century. She rode a horse and buggy. Okay, she was a tough woman, and she couldn't do it. So here at Bowling Green, I thought, okay, I can sing. What else can I do? I joined the university chorus as a first-year student because I was assured by people that among several hundred voices, nobody would notice my deficiency. That turned out to be true. What I could do is I listened to the person next to me the first time through, and when I heard the melody I was supposed to sing, I was the second baritone, I listened to the way he sang the song, and then the second time through, I did a pretty good job. But I wanted more. Wasn't enough. So in my sophomore year, I auditioned for the Acapella Choir. Now, Warren Joseph, the choir director, immediately recognized my shortcomings. But I think he appreciated my ambition. So he told me I could join under one condition. I'd have to go with some other students for some tutorial classes to improve my skills. So I found myself standing in the choir next to Ed and Jim, either side of me, who both knew how to read music. Now, although the tutorial had helped, what made it possible for me to have some of the most memorable experiences of my life was listening to those two guys next to me. And that included an amazing performance of Carmina Burana over in the old Anderson Arena when it was still used for concerts. We simultaneously raised the roof and brought down the house. There wasn't a dry eye out there, including mine. So I'd begun the Acapella Choir before I was ready, but I managed to stay in tune and enjoy great performances because I managed to identify and learn from people who knew more than I did, the best people around me. So looking back over my experiences here, I now recognize I tackled some activities too soon, and I left a trail of accidents and mistakes behind me to verify that. But I also realized if I had waited until I felt fully ready, I really would have been deprived of some amazing experiences. By challenging myself, by trying to do things before I felt I was truly ready, I eventually learned to adapt and to come up with creative solutions to problems. I just had to be willing to begin before I was ready. And that's been my motto ever since. I invite the graduates of this mid-year commencement to try it also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Howard, for your inspirational remarks and the wisdom you provided our graduates. I now invite